listening to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. This is Dr. Charles Laux, and our episode 96 with an amazing guest who has touched the lives of so many students across his 41-year career. And this is Mr. Bill Bitter. Bill, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the invite. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, I know that you retired just a couple years ago. I guess it's almost been 3 now, right?
Well, I'm 3.
And from Gilbert Public Schools in Gilbert, Arizona. Tell us about your career and your, your training and all the stuff you did. Could you just let us know a little bit more about all that you've done?
Well, sure. I'm an Arizona native. I grew up in Scottsdale. Back before it was that really fancy place. It was just a small town. In fact, Gilbert, when my wife and I, who also grew up in Scottsdale, when we moved to Gilbert, and we raised our kids here, we remarked all the time about how similar it felt to Scottsdale. But anyway, I was a sort of a Suzuki kid. It was they were just starting. 2 teachers in the Phoenix area were doing Suzuki violin kind of in its infancy. So I started at the age of 6 because my sister was playing violin. She started taking lessons, and I asked Mom if I could do that. And well, I was already in piano, and everybody had to have piano lessons.
Okay,
so
that was a requirement.
Yeah. And so she said, well, I'll tell you what, if we'll let you start, but you have to stay on piano. If you last for a whole year on both of them, then you can decide which one you want. So that was good.
Yeah.
It worked. And I decided I'd rather do violin. And so I played all through elementary school and high school without having a school orchestra program.
Wow.
So that was all. I did youth orchestra, of course. So that was kind of my school orchestra. But I wanted to be with my friends in music at school. So in 5th grade, Mom, can I join the band? Well, yeah, but I'm not renting you another instrument. So it's got to be something they have at school.
Oh.
So it was French horn. So I played French horn all the way through high school and even a little bit in college, which was super cool.
That is great.
And, so that was kind of a neat to have that experience as well. But anyway, went to Arizona State University in Tempe. I had met Dr. Eugene Lombardi, who is a big name in Arizona and in the West. Well, I'd met him teaching. He taught one of my youth orchestras for several years. And so he was the director of orchestras at ASU. And I wanted to go there and study with him. So was fortunate to be able to do all that. And I entered as a performance major because I was determined from watching the Boston Symphony on PBS that I was going to play in the Boston Symphony one day. And
that's cool.
I think I was telling you the other night when at my first lesson, and we went through some scales and arpeggios that I really hadn't worked on. And I kind of looked, he said, well, Bill, you might want to just consider having an education focus just so you have a couple of options. He didn't say it was going to be my backup, but you just need to probably have some options.
Options are good.
Yeah. And so he encouraged me to declare as an education major and get in that track. And I did, and I was hooked. And it was like that, I realized pretty quickly I wasn't going to be the person that could commit enough practice room time to really focus on performance as a career.
And what set you like, okay, I am going to teach. Are you ready to shake up your next orchestra trip? Kaleidoscope Adventures has been planning performance travel beyond expectations for more than 30 years. They know the best destinations and the most iconic venues for orchestras. Check out the Kaleidoscope Adventures link in the show notes below for fresh ideas and inspiration. And then let them do their magic. They'll handle all the details from start to finish, so all you have to do is enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it was a few weeks. Our freshman year, one of the intro to music ed class required us to go visit 2 or 3 different schools and, go visit for an hour and turn in a report on what we learned. And I visited Lou Felton over in Tempe at one of the elementary schools. And I visited Joe Lloyd out at school in Mesa. And I just thought, this is so cool. This is exactly what I want to do. And my roommate at the time was already declared as an ed major. He was a bass player. We were best friends from high school.
Cool.
And he was also ed major. We just decided, we're going to both be band or orchestra directors or whatever it turns out to be. So
now, because you had the French horn background, were you considering band too?
Well, it wasn't. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
was. I mean, I really wanted to be an orchestra teacher. And as it turns out, when I got to Gilbert, I took the Gilbert job, and it was a tiny, tiny community on the far southeast edge of Phoenix that had just been trying to grow a string program, and it had not been very successful. They had one teacher teaching at all 6 schools in the district.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It was a challenge. The year they hired me, and actually my best friend Mark too, from college, they hired 3 of us to fill those 3 positions, and then filled our day with some other stuff.
Wow.
So I was just orchestra. I think I taught general music, half a day of general music for 7th graders.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's challenging.
It was really hard. I was not very good at it, and it took a lot of time for prep because I had no training in that.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, if I'd have been a little smarter, we'd have just been doing, let's get out these violins and I'll teach you. But I wasn't smart enough to do that. But anyway, the band director I worked with my first 12 years, his name is Phil Hattler, another well-known name, at least in Arizona and California. He had been growing the band program. He taught at the same school that I did, the junior high school and the high school. And he said, his numbers were growing. He said, my numbers are up. They're going to let me have an assistant band director. You want to do it? I said, heck yeah. So that got me out of some of my general music responsibilities.
Right.
Leapt right into the marching band world, which had changed, at least from my perspective, from over the 5 or 6 years since I'd been in high school. And so, I had my own experience, but it wasn't what they were doing with core style and all that.
Oh,
so anyway, so learned a ton. I learned so much. And I talk a lot when I talk to students. I learned a lot about how to be efficient in rehearsals with my experience in marching band, because it's different when you have to have a show on the field every Friday night.
Right, right. Was this where you did like a different show every Friday night?
No, it was a competitive.
Okay, so yeah,
it was and the justification. There's a lot of good justifications, and there's arguments against it, but I'm a fan of it because it takes those kids to, well, what are we going to add this week, and what's going to be better this week, and and you still have so many schedules to meet. So anyway, I learned about rehearsal efficiency and using less words, and choosing the right words and all of that. So yeah. It was a good training. Right. So anyway, we were when I got there, we still had 1 high school, 4 elementaries, and a junior high. I taught 7 through 12, did a little bit of 5th and 6th grade band 1 semester to fill a need, taught some elementary strings. Again, not my best moments, but I mean, I learned, the kids learned. It just that clearly wasn't where my strength was. And,
well, those are things we figure out as we start our careers. What we like best, what works best for us, what doesn't work. I mean, there's a lot that we figure out, and and I always kind of say, like, until you've taught for 5 years, you really don't. Most people don't know what they're doing very well. Because we don't get that true teaching experience until we've been in the trenches for a little while.
I couldn't agree more. I had all these ideas of what the students were going to be able to do when I started teaching there, because that was my experience as a private student, and even my high school music program, even though we didn't have band and orchestra and do all the competitive kinds of things, it was a school that put on 2 musicals a year. In fact, I started playing in the musicals before I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Because they didn't have any string players. My older sister, was still playing violin. She was in the pit orchestra in high school, wanted to be on stage. And they said, oh, no, we need you to play violin in the pit. She said, well, I got this little brother that's not too bad. So believe it or not, as a 6th grader, I got to play my first musical. It was Oklahoma. It was the most amazing experience ever for an 11-year-old.
I was going to say, and that music's not the easiest for an 11-year-old either.
No, and that was before they had gone through and republished them in print. They were all manuscript books.
Oh, really hard to read.
Those were such good experiences. Yeah, by the time I left high school, I'd played, I think, over a dozen musicals, and it was it was a good training, and it got me very excited. That was another reason I was pretty excited to settle on teaching in college.
Yeah, you had some neat experiences.
Yeah. Anyway, 12 years before we split into two high schools. That was the big trauma for the district.
Oh.
Gilbert High School was probably, I think, had been think the district was 80 years old at that time, so that had one high school. All those years, a small farming community was just exploding. And over the next 20 years, we opened 4 new high schools, 25 new elementary schools, 4 or 5 junior highs. It just things.
When did that? So that was like in the 90s.
Started in the 80s.
In the 80s,
I got there in 1981. And by 1984, we had opened our next elementary school. And then from then on, it was almost at least 1, maybe 2 schools a year. Similar to what went on, I think, in your original neck of the woods out there in Clark County.
Exactly. In Nevada, it was in Las Vegas area. It was the same way. When I got there in 96, it was just booming so fast that they couldn't build the schools fast enough. So I started out on a year-round school system where we had four tracks. And so in the middle school, it was 4 tracks. And so there was 25% of the school that was out at any given time. So we would do 12 weeks in school, 4 weeks off school, year-round. And so every track there was always a track that was out. So technically you could fit, about 25% more people in a school, even though they weren't always there at the same time.
Right.
But so as a young teacher with no kids and no family, it was a great schedule because you would have a break. You'd have 4 weeks off, all different parts of the year and different seasons, and you could travel and not have to worry about the crowds and whatnot. So it was really great. But if you had a family, it was terrible because the elementary schools were on a 5-track system. They were 9 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And then the high schools were traditional, like 9-month schedule, 10-month schedule, like most of them are today. So if you had kids in mixed levels, it had to have been a nightmare for families. But that was the only way they were able to squeeze more kids into a school. And even then, both my middle schools, we had tons of portable classrooms as well. So it was, so it's a very similar thing. I think out west at that time was just booming and everybody was moving there and housing was cheap and it was crazy, but there's tons and tons and tons of kids.
I think they're real similar storylines for both areas for sure. And it wasn't just Gilbert, but it was I think most prevalent on the East Valley for sure. And it's continuing to grow farther southeast from us. There's communities there that have continued to grow and are opening schools. And thankfully for us, we didn't have the financial issues that there are now. It's harder and harder now to get things open. But it was exciting. It was an exciting time to be in Gilbert. It was definitely the right choice, for me. We have 4 children. We moved into Gilbert after I'd been teaching there a few years so that my kids could go to Gilbert schools. Mm-hmm. They all ended up going to my high school. When we opened Highland. In fact, that was really the defining thing to make the decision to go to the new school was our house was zoned to go to the new school. I really thought I wanted to keep my program at Gilbert. We had finally had 100 strings. I thought that was, golden. Yeah. And we gave that up, but I wanted to teach my kids. And so,
well, that's a huge thing that I think, a lot of teachers, if they don't have that opportunity would be, really thankful for. I mean, I know I would if I had that opportunity, but I don't. It's a special thing for sure.
And tons of memories, with them in class. And I was still teaching bands. I stayed assistant marching band or assistant band director for almost 35 years.
Wow.
Until my youngest son graduated.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, here's the secret, and this is for string teachers. I wanted to have a full orchestra program, and it's hard to recruit wind players when they don't know who you are. But if you've been out sweating on the marching field since
I was going to say, you put in your time to get those full orchestra kids. And
and even after we were established, I always had openings I had to fill. So as I'm teching the marching band and listening to the kids, hey, have you thought about it? You should make space because symphony was only second semester. So it was
and that's kind of what I think a lot of schools do. I mean, that's what we do. We have a pretty competitive marching band program, and there's just no time for a semester to even start rehearsing. So that's fantastic. So then you were there your whole career.
I was,
That's an amazing accomplishment, and just that dedication. And I mean, you develop that like legendary status for the kids. So recruiting's probably really easy. Everybody knows, Mr. Bitter, like, right? Is that?
Yeah, it particular. I don't know when I crossed that line. There was definitely a period of time when I was just that kid. For the first 5 or 6 years, the community knew me as the assistant band director.
Sure.
And I had to remind them that I taught orchestra too.
Right.
And at some point we crossed that line, and yeah, it was wonderful. I had tons of siblings.
Right.
Over 40 years. I had
I was going to say any grand siblings.
Yeah, we had a large number of grand students.
Oh, that's so cool.
In fact, my very first orchestra, I had 5 kids at Gilbert High that first year. I had a all-state level bass player through really no reason. I didn't have any reason to do that. It was actually the previous director had really fostered it. And then 4 other kids that we had at least the right instrumentation. Anyway, but he hung in with me through the Gilbert High early years, and then went on to become a rocket scientist, a literal rocket scientist.
Wow.
When moved back to the Midwest, worked there. But when they started to raise their kids, they moved home to Gilbert. He had 4 bass students. Four bass students. He had 4 sons. 4 bass students
that all played bass. Wow.
Yeah. And the one thing I did with James was I got him connected with Dan Swaim, who I'm sure your listeners know who Dan Swaim was, a Suzuki bass pedagogue from ASU. He had been my college advisor, and I got James studying with him. Well, all 4 of James's sons studied with Dan as well.
Wow.
And they traveled all over with him when he did his Suzuki bass presentations for ASTA and the Suzuki conference. And anyway, the youngest one graduated the year I retired. So I started with the Myers family, and I landed with the Myers family, which was kind of a neat bookend. Yeah.
So you retired in 2022 with 41 years teaching experience. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And so how has retirement been? What, I know that there's a lot of teachers who teach for decades and decades, and then they're retired, and what do you do? And I know you probably kept busy, but can you tell us a little bit about that transition that you had to make and what went through your head and how it was?
Yeah, for sure. Even just this last few days at ASTA,
that's right. We were at ASTA together in Atlanta, and this is the weekend after, but that's when we're recording at least. So
I had several colleagues who are getting close, and they all asked me, well, how did you know? How did you know? And I had been told for a long time by my older colleagues, they said, you'll know when it's time. And I did. I had an epiphany on a Thanksgiving dinner and realized that I was ready to be done. And that was before COVID.
Okay. So you knew that before COVID, and then you stuck it out through COVID.
Well, I had to. I was planning to teach that year, and then the very next year. That was going to be 40 years. Mm-hmm. And then COVID hit. And so what was my 40th year teaching was just so not normal.
Yeah.
And
it was the worst.
Yeah. And it was really important to me to leave the program in a place where whoever came in could take over the program comfortably and have things in the right place.
Right.
And I had a co-teacher. Her name's Amy Bennett. We taught together for 25 years.
Wow.
She stayed in her role as the junior high feeder teacher, and then part-time at the high school. And
she did not want to take the high school position, or
no, she absolutely did not.
She loves the middle school.
She loves the middle, and she's a wizard. She's one of the finest middle school teachers I ever. And I'd like to tell you that I really knew that. I had a feeling, but I didn't really know that was going to be the case. But I'm glad I was right, because we had a great team going. Anyway, so I wanted to leave things in place for her and the next person. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like we should do one more year. And it turned out we had also in that year, we got to go to Midwest for the 4th time, which was super cool. And
amazing.
That journey is, as you know, is incredible.
Yeah. So you went 4 times over your career.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
That is very cool. Was it always strings, or you take a full orchestra group ever?
No, we only did strings in the fall, so it was always string orchestra.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it was the first time we went was kind of by accident. We applied. I kind of was dared to apply. We had a good group, and we got in. And after we went through that process and that journey, and it wasn't. I mean, the week of Midwest and the performance was incredible. but the real, as you know, the real value of that whole process is all the preparation and all the organizing it forces you and forces the students to do and to prepare for that kind of a high level.
And the experience of going to Chicago, I mean, at that time of the year, it's like very special for me. The memories I have of, taking students and just going to the conference, but taking students and, both groups I've taken, very, very special in my mind, and groups I'll never forget, just because you said it's like that process of the application, and then the announcement, and then once you do it, then you're trying to pick repertoire, and then that preparation and just going for it is unlike really anything else.
It was amazing. First time we did it, anyway, I told myself, okay, any chance we get to do this, we got to do it again. And I didn't know if that would ever happen, but we were very fortunate at the right time.
Well, I mean, you're doing all the right things if you're able to take a group 4 times. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So congratulations.
Well, thanks. We were very proud of that, but that's only part of the thing.
It's a small part, but it's a great accomplishment for you. And then so more about the retirement, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We go back to teaching. We just keep going back to teaching. It's great. That's all the fun stuff.
So anyway, by the time we got to the end of that last year, I mean, I loved my job, but I was running on fumes. And I had people that spring calling me, "Oh, you're going to retire? Would you like to be a sectional coach? I got work for this. Can you come out and do clinic here?" And I told everybody that called, I said, "No, for a year, the answer is going to be no. I just needed to not have anything like that on my plate." I have an amazing wife who I told her I was going to retire a year earlier than I ended up retiring. No,
so you owed her time.
She was wonderful about it. And so she said, "No, I need to put time in with my family and at home and honestly not answer an alarm clock." That's the biggest thing about retiring that I think, and I heard that a lot this week from the other emeritus committee members. It's being retired from that alarm clock, not really retiring from the work.
Right.
So I did for that whole year. I didn't do it. I did like one adjudicating event, just because I'd promised the chairman that I would do it. But anyway, after we got through that, and people, thank goodness they didn't forget me. People started calling, and so I've been able to. I've had the chance to do some way more adjudicating in Arizona than I was able to do while I was teaching.
Yeah, it's hard to take days off, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So I would do that. And people that call me to come, can you do clinic visit as we prepare for this concert rep? I've been able to go and do that. And again, I'm retired and I got a car, so I can drive somewhere. It's not a deal breaker, I've had the other thing we have. I don't know. Every state does their all-state differently, but in Arizona, before all-state, there's region orchestra,
right,
which is like the precursor. And in Arizona, they want the region conductors to all be from in-state.
Oh, okay.
And so I had done some earlier in my career, loved doing it, but I got to the point, especially when my own children were in school and were auditioning for regional band and whatnot, I wanted to be with my own school. I didn't want to be away in some other region. So I turned down a bunch of those. And again, thankfully, people asked me again. So the last couple of years, I got to do a region orchestra. So that's been really fun. And
great.
I have grandkids in town, so I spend time with the grandkids. We have a 7th grader and a 6th grader.
Fun.
So as they were in elementary school, at the same school their mom went to, on early release days, that's grandma and papa time. So we bring them home and hang out with them, take them to lunch or whatever. So we got
spoil them and then send them home.
That's the reward, man. That's right.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. That's an amazing. And then so besides doing some adjudicating in clinics, are you doing some guest conducting? Well, you said you did some guest conducting for regionals.
Yeah, well, I was able to do a thing in Perrysburg, Ohio.
Yeah.
Michael Smith, who has an amazing program at Perrysburg High School. We became acquainted because his son Ryan taught with us for a couple of years,
nice.
My last 2 years. So, and then we were actually at Midwest together that last year. So we got to know them and the kids. And 2 years ago, they were preparing for the ASTA National Orchestra Festival.
Right.
And he said, "Oh, I got some grant money. You want to come out and hang out for 2 or 3 days and work with the kids?" Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So I went out in January, which is
that's great
for Desert Rat. So I spent like 2.5 days at Perrysburg High and worked with all his kids. And
it's a great program.
They're just solid top to bottom, and
yep.
a well-oiled machine, because he's been doing it for a long, long time, and he knows what he's doing. Anyway, so we helped them with that. And then this last year he called me back and said, hey, we have it's kind of a region orchestra thing too. It's a different format, but it was string orchestra. He said, you want to guest conduct? Absolutely. So I got to go back.
There you go. I think I did that Ohio region back in 2010. I don't know, a long time ago, but it was just, it was amazing experience and great kids and all well prepared. And
it was again, really, really well done and a wonderful thing. So so that was fun. And I don't know that I could have said yes to either of those things in January when I was teaching, because that's 3-4 days off of school by the time you travel.
It is. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. And I get some opportunities, but I really have to pick and choose what I'm able to do and take, personal days to do it. So it's, but this is fantastic. This is kind of what I'm looking forward to when I retire, but it's going to be a while, a little while, about 9 more years, or give or take.
Yeah, but it's going to fly by, because there were times when I was about your age and a spot in my career, I thought, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And then I'd go to work and it'd be fine, because I always loved being in front of the kids.
That's my favorite thing. The kids are great. They keep me energized, and it's just always something to look forward to. And every year is very different. So at least I try to make it that way. I don't want it to be the same. So what are some of, maybe just going back, because you in 41 years teaching, you've played a lot of repertoire. What are some of your favorite go-tos for, since you did high school? I guess we can talk about high school orchestra. What are some of your pieces that everybody should play?
I'm not sure I'm going to have any new things that people haven't heard of, but things like St. Paul's Suite, the Tchaikovsky Serenade was always a go-to. Never did the whole thing at once, of course.
Right. It's a lot.
Picked and chose movements. And I think I only did the first movement once. That one always scared the heck out of me.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I think it's definitely the hardest one. But and there's a couple of beautiful Vaughan Williams pieces that I would do. I did those 3 or 4 times over the years when the groups were consistently strong enough to do the Fantasia on the theme by Thomas Tallis. Yes. One of my absolute favorites. And when we had harpists, we started to get harpists in our program. Then we did the 5 variants of Dives of Lazarus, which is super cool.
Yeah.
The Rudder Suite is something I think that's really accessible, more accessible maybe than people think and give credit to.
Yeah. I think, it's hard, but you can pull it off and do a good job. I think maybe even with a level 5 group, if they're good, if they're dedicated to it, and depending on how much time you have.
And I think this is one of my soapboxes. I think if you're careful about tempo, tempo doesn't have to be as quick as all the recordings are.
Yeah.
I learned that lesson at an Allstate one year, and I can't remember the name of the conductor, but they were doing Night on Bald Mountain, and he started the Bald Mountain really, really slow from what I thought from my experience in recordings. And I thought, this is Allstate. And he never sped up. And all through the course of that rehearsal, watching him work that orchestra, there was so much power and energy by having to wait for things. It's like it kind of struck a chord. And said, okay, I need to remember this, that you don't always have to go that fast tempo. You can get more detail, especially with your regular high school groups, not your advanced groups, get more details correct. And I think that's a more compelling listening experience, So I've watched that, I think, a lot over my career, not taking tempos maybe as fast as we had to. And then there's sometimes too where you just want to whip the heck out of it.
Or the kids rush in the performance, right?
Yeah, there is that. We've all been there, yeah.
You're right. You never know. Sometimes. This is great. How about teach some teaching strategies how would you say you personalized your teaching, or what made yours maybe different than other people's, or some of the things that you really focused on?
Well, we made a point with no matter what age level, including our very top kids, we played scales in class a lot. We made them play them a lot. We tested them regularly. And not that everybody was playing their 3-octave scales impeccably pure. But they had to have some facility and not be afraid of all registers on the instrument.
Yeah.
So we did that. We started that, teaching with Amy when she took the 5th and 6th grade kids in. She got them all together in 7th grade. We kind of had a plan, and she kind of sequenced it. We added arpeggios, we added things. So by the time that the kids were ready to go in our top group, they'd had experience with almost all the 3-octave scales, major and minor.
That's fantastic.
Not all. We only went 4 sharps and 4 flats.
Right. I mean, that's good enough.
Yeah. And that was the requirement for our regional all-state auditions.
Okay.
I heard Chris Selby talking about frontier keys in his session at ASTA, and I'd never heard that term, and that's what I'm going to use now. When you're in the key of B major, that's a frontier key, man. That's a little, you never know what's going to happen.
I guess I missed that, but that's a good way to put it. Frontier.
So anyway, so that was a thing. And as I talk to colleagues and people, I'm not sure everybody emphasizes those as much. And there's always, I even see it on like the Facebook string group, what's a good scale book to do for the whole group? Well, we created our own scale sheet.
Okay.
That we used. And it took us about 3 years to settle on the right bass fingerings that we wanted to use.
Bass fingerings are the hardest thing ever.
Yeah. And of course, cello fingerings. And then Amy and I are both violinists, and we were comfortable with the violin finger pattern that we wanted our kids to use for those. And so we required that from those fingerings from our kids in class, unless they had a private teacher that was doing something else.
I always default to the private teacher. If your private teacher tells you to do that, then you do that.
Yeah, for sure. So, in fact, I had one private teacher years ago that got mad at me for doing scales so much in class as the kids got closer. Well, it wasn't really mad, but he pointed out a fault in our system. We kept playing the scales in class all the way into the audition season, and he expressed concern to me that because the kids were practicing them so much in class, in the mishmash of 50, 60 kids, their intonation they were getting away with intonation issues that they wouldn't in their auditions. And he said, it would help me as Carla's private teacher if she wasn't playing those in class. And it got me to thinking, okay, well, that's a thing we maybe should adjust. So we would stress with our kids, okay, regionals is coming up. It's your job now to get them exactly in tune with yourself. And then we really stressed the digital tuner and so that they would refine their pitch, because as you know, with a group of 50 and 60, you can get away with some of that.
Right. There's always kids who kind of are able to hide a little bit. So,
it's not just the weak kids. It affected the more advanced students that they kind of struggled to play as well in tune as they wanted
refinement.
to. So anyway,
did you use? Are you a fan of using drones for during scales and arpeggios? Did you ever use drone pitches?
Not very often.
Okay.
No, not very often. I had a student teacher who was really good at making that work, and we utilized it. I really wanted my kids to be sure to be able to play in time, so I was a metronome guy.
Sure.
We used a metronome a lot.
Yeah.
And, that helped me get off the podium a lot while they were doing things like Mueller Rush book and scales and even repertoire, if it was something within time. That helped me to be able to get around and get to the middle of the orchestra and hear things that I didn't hear on the podium. So
Yeah.
We mentioned Mueller Rush. I'm one of those old school guys. Mueller Rush guy. No pictures, no fluff.
No,
it's like vegetables, kids.
Right. I love the book 3, the orange book.
Yeah. Yep.
My students would call it the dreaded orange book. But you're right. It's just bare bones in there. We don't have any. There's not a lot of like theory or anything like that. It's just like. Here are the like book 3. Here are the positions. Here's what we're doing, and I liked the fact that they were like they were called lessons. As you went through the book. So, they're. I mean, those books were written in the 60s, I think. And,
they were old when I was in school.
Right, and still a lot of great pedagogy in those books.
Yeah.
So, and you can get those cheap for people that are listening. If you're interested in looking at those, like a class set. I mean, I know when I was buying them, they were like $6 a piece. So, I think Jose publishes those, and they're great. It's a great book, even if you're using other method books. Supplement. Some fantastic things in there. Yeah.
So and that was one of the other things that I did that I'm not sure is as common as I wish it was in classrooms, and that is we hung in with the method books all the way through junior high, all the way through freshman, sophomore, even a little bit of junior year before we kind of got away from method book work and then into focusing so much more on the 3-octave scales. That changed a little bit when Chris Selby's book came out, the Habits book.
Yeah.
I bought a bunch of those and incorporated those in with the older group, which I just really loved all that.
It's a great book. Yeah, it's a great book, and just the tuning exercises in there are great, and for those kids who don't take lessons and whatnot, there's fantastic fingerings for all the scales and arpeggios, and and everybody will debate scales, fingerings, and whatever, but there's just a really great resource. And I know he just came out with the second edition too, so I'm checking that out a little bit.
I didn't get a chance to check it out at the conference. I got to do that. And
they might send you a violin book or something to look at.
I probably should have stopped and asked. That's less pressing to me since I'm not in a daily classroom. So
that's right.
So it wasn't. I became a big fan. Absolutely, for sure. When that came out too. So
great.
And then and I mentioned metronome work. We would do that. That helps when a sub is not there too. When you're not in school and they have a substitute, the kids can learn to get stuff done. We chunked music a lot. We talked about rehearsing repertoire. That was a pretty common technique.
What are some of the strategies that you used for that?
Well, we would use rehearsal numbers or measure numbers or whatever to set logical chunks of music, so that they had to really focus on listening to each other. Most often when I was rehearsing something like that, it was without me conducting. So I would either start them and stop, or I'd give them 4 clicks on the metronome to get them to go or something. And then they had to play that chunk together, and they had to stop it together. We're playing, these 5 measures plus 1 note. We always overlapped a note. So, and of course, the first 3-4 times, somebody misses it every time. So, nope, that wasn't it. Do it again. Nope, that wasn't it. Do it. And it's like, oh, Mr. Bitter, you're being so picky. But we're also practicing. So we were getting.
And that's what makes them good.
So that was a pretty common thing, especially in terms of lining up, quicker pieces of music. We worked on tone a lot too, Charles.
So I've been using this new budgeting app called You Need a Budget, or YNAB for short, and it's a game changer. I have never felt so in control of my money and so excited about the future. So sign up for YNAB, and then we can nerd out together. If you sign up, you get a 1-month free trial, and you can find that at tinyurl.com/the Orchestra Teacher YNAB. What were some of did you have different exercises you did, or warm-ups that you talked about, or?
We called it the strolling warm-up. One of the things we taught was strolling strings. And so
okay.
Strolling goes to, goes to new performance venues to perform. So you want to be sure they're playing with confident sound. So one of my mentors from years back, Clarence Shaw, used to make us play long tone scales, 8-count notes, 12-count notes, 6, just stupid long, right? But to make you think about saving bow at the beginning and having enough weight out at the end and all those kinds of things.
You got to budget the bow. You got to maximize the sound and the contact point, and figure out a way to use a small amount of bow or a lot of bow, but over a long period of time.
Right.
And still get a big sound.
So that was a daily warm up for strolling rehearsal, because we wanted to. Then whenever we were focused on working on something that they were needing that help in regular class, we're going to do the strolling scales for a little bit, and we would do that and same kind of thing. And again, with a metronome running, I was able to get around and help kids identify, no, you used all your bow in 3 counts. It's not going to, and so we were able to fix things that way. So, and then there's the whole bow change thing too. You've heard it. I know you hear groups all over the country that trying to eliminate that hiccup at the bow change. It's such a hard thing to do. And I won't claim that we solved it, because we didn't, right? But I know that I feel very comfortable saying that my students left my program with with awareness, a good strong awareness, and this is what I have to do to be sure I play a connected phrase.
Yeah,
and I think that has helped them as they've played beyond high school. Yeah,
that's very cool. Very cool. Well, it sounds like you've done so many things, and I love all these like strategies that you've talked about today. And
thanks.
I appreciate you being here. It's just great to catch up a little bit at ASTA, and we've talked before, but I think we had a little bit more time this time. And then in the Emeritus Committee, you were able to kind of tell your story. Everybody we went around in the Emeritus Committee roundtable, and we had some legends like yourself all lined up, and it was just an amazing experience to hear all of you guys tell your story. And
it was pretty fun.
And then for the first time, we did a little reception, and we had a good turnout for that. And we went around and added up all the number of years teaching experience in the room, and it ended up being 1,265 years of teaching experience all in one room. Just some amazing folks in there. So it was, I don't know, it was a really great way to celebrate you guys. And then I know that all the emeritus members, just like yourself, like you said, you're retired from the alarm clock, but now you want to be able to do more and help those that are newer in the profession to keep it going.
Yeah. I'm really hoping we see at that level, we see some of that can grow and become more readily available to people all around the country.
And thank you for your work on the committee and being involved in that.
Yeah, well, and thank you too. I know you're gonna be on to something bigger and better after the.
It's just enjoying doing this and getting to talk to more people and spread the orchestra love. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, thanks so much for being an awesome guest. Appreciate it. And
thank you.
Yeah. And for the Orchestra Teacher Podcast, this is episode number 96 signing off. See you all later. Thank you for tuning in. For resources and more information, visit orchestrateacher.net.